Hello and welcome everyone. In the last session, we learned about tools for assessing a social enterprise, including the Blender model and the 4 ways of impact. Before going further, I would like to acknowledge that this event is being hosted on Indigenous lands. The land acknowledgement is a practice in Canada to bring awareness at public events to Indigenous presence, history, and land rights. Today, I'm joining this virtual event from the University of Calgary, which is situated on the land adjacent to where the Bow River meets the Elbow River. The traditional Blackfoot name of this place is Moquinstis, which we now call the city of Calgary. We invite you to share the region from which you are joining us in the chat. If this practice is new to you, we challenge you to take some time to learn more about the traditional keepers of the land where you're from. My name is Kristy Wong, and I'm the Enactus UCalgary co-president. At Enactus, we are part of a worldwide network of students who are using business as a force of good. Personally, I'm also a student co-founder of a social enterprise, so I'm really excited to hear from my peers in the session today. I'm also one of the recipients of the Trico New Provincial Award. But today, this will not be about me, but our amazing student entrepreneurs. The session is meant to be interactive, so please use the chat to share your thoughts and comments. Use the Q&A feature to submit questions to the panel, which can then be upvoted by other audience members so we can address questions of the most interest first. Remember to use hashtag POP2021 on social media if you're sharing anything from the POP Summit. All the sessions today and tomorrow are being simultaneously translated into French. It is now my pleasure to introduce you to Patrick Chiu, who will be announcing the recipient of the new National Award. Patrick is involved with the new Community Board, which provides funding and support to student social entrepreneurs and emerging leaders in the social impact space. Over to you, Patrick. While we're waiting for Patrick to jump in from the other session, I just want to talk about how I've had such a pleasant experience with the new community board as well. And like I mentioned, I'm a co-founder of a social enterprise. So I actually won the provincial award for this award that everyone will hear about today. And Trico has been really great in providing support and also, rather than that, new ways of thinking. And something that I implemented in my own social enterprise is thinking about how we can think about our impact in terms of meeting UN sustainable goals. And so that's something that was really brand new to me, but I've really enjoyed integrating that into how we do business because it helps us stay grounded as a team and also know that we're working on an impact that is so much larger than us and something that's recognized by the United Nations as well. All right, I'll put it over to you now, Patrick.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kristy. And I hope you're doing well. So it is my honor to present this year's jury prize for the 2021 New National Student Social Entrepreneur Award. Now, keeping true to what Trico has been saying for a very long time, it's doing well by doing good. And with that, the Trico Charitable Foundation, through that, we were able to create the new community board. So the new community board is actually being facilitated by young Canadian leaders for young Canadian leaders in the social enterprise space. Our goal is really to support emerging social impact leaders in the work of closing gaps in society through grants and awards, which circles back to how TCF defines social enterprise. So for this year, the inaugural new National Student Award, we were really focusing on how are we creating this application process. And the jury that was picked was actually between 3 people. And because it's inaugural, we really wanted to keep it small at first. But what we used to determine which applicant was and which leader and business was able to succeed into the actual award itself, we looked at how they're using the Blender canvas as what you saw just now with Alexandra and Dan, what they were talking about, and how the full application of their business focuses on, social and entrepreneur basic blends, the innovation of the blend, and how it's addressing the impact of bridging the gaps in society. Now, the prize itself is $25,000. And this is exciting for us as this is our first time seeing this on a national scale. And we were very, very impressed that we were actually received over 19 applicants from various different post-secondary institutions around Canada. So without further ado, I want to announce this year's 2021 new National Student Award for Social Entrepreneurship. Roll here, Hydrohouse. And I just want to give a huge round of applause to Hydrohouse. And I think we're going to be showing a quick video as well to learn a little bit more about them.
Hi, my name is Lucas Godkin.
And my name is Peter Cornelisse. We are both in our 4th year of mechanical engineering studies at the University of Waterloo. And in 2021, we co-founded Hydrohouse.
Society is facing an existential risk due to finite and rapidly depleting fossil fuel resources. There are hundreds of thousands of Canadians in remote communities who rely on fossil fuels to power their homes. These Canadians pay some of the highest electricity rates in Canada and stand to pay significantly more as fossil fuel prices continue to soar.
Renewable energy installations to date have been band-aid solutions at best. They allow remote communities to offset their diesel consumption, but they cannot completely eliminate fossil fuel dependence.
Hydrohouse has developed a solution to this problem. Our home energy system powers single residences year-round. We accomplish this by generating solar energy for direct use in the summer and providing a system to store excess energy for use in the winter.
Access to energy bolsters every aspect of individual and community life. It allows people to work, learn, and stay connected. It really evens the playing field for these people in remote areas. Where traditional energy companies have really left these people behind, our social model targets these people specifically with a solution that's adapted for them.
Winning the Student Social Entrepreneurship Award would help us to complete our system prototype and bring us one step closer to providing a secure energy future for Canadians in remote communities.
Yeah, we'd like to end with a thank you to the Trico Foundation for organizing this event. And really, thanks for supporting social entrepreneurs in Canada. It means a lot. Thanks.
Well, a huge congratulations to Hydrohouse. What a super worthwhile problem to be solving. And now we are going to be turning our audience into investors. How will we do this, you ask? You become an investor by choosing the recipient of the Popular Choice Award. You, the audience, will choose which of the new Student Awards finalists will receive the $10,000 Popular Choice Award. A poll will appear on the screen and you will have 1 minute to vote for your choice.
First, the driver will close and hold one eye to turn on the turn signal. Notice the camera at the top of the windshield inside the vehicle and pay attention to the turn signals outside as he does the gesture. Next, the driver is going to activate the wipers with a big smile and one eye closed. Finally, he will activate his turn signal by closing one eye. Excessium Technologies is a software and electronics manufacturing startup company with a mission to create products that will help improve the lives of others. Our core philosophy believes in the power of technology to adapt in our rapidly changing world. Drivers with physical disabilities typically use hand controls to operate a vehicle. One hand controls the spinner knob, which helps steer the wheel, while the other hand activates a mechanical lever to help control the gas or brake. With both hands occupied, it is nearly impossible to control secondary vehicle functions such as turn signals and windshield wipers. Our technology uses facial gesture recognition to allow the driver to safely and effectively control secondary vehicle functions. By blinking their left eye, a driver is able to activate a left turn signal. Excessium aims to enhance the social and economic livelihoods of individuals living with or alongside impaired accessibility.
My name is Dunlop, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm the president and founder of the Boring Little Girls Club. The Boring Little Girls Club is a community of sober women, trans, and non-binary folks who have fun without alcohol and recreational drugs. The Boring Little Girls Club was created by myself in November 2018 as a response to the lack of safer, sober, affirming spaces that weren't traditional recovery spaces. In the future, we're looking to grow and expand across the country so that there can be chapters in every city and no one ever has to feel alone. Now let me introduce you to our team members.
Hello, my name is Marie, my pronouns are she, her, and I'm the vice president of the Boring Little Girls Club.
My name is Kat Black, my pronouns are she, her, and I currently reside as the secretary on the board of directors of the Boring Little Girls Club.
Hi, my name is Brandy, my pronouns are she, her, and I am the sergeant at arms for the Boring Little Girls Club.
Hi, my name is Miranda and my pronouns are she and her. I am the Inclusion and Diversity Liaison for the Boring Little Girls Club.
Hi, I'm Donna Chantasiri. Pronouns are she, her. I'm treasurer of the Boring Little Girls Club.
Hi, my name's Rebecca. My pronouns are she, her. I'm captain of the Sober Supporters for the Boring Little Girls Club. When you're living in sobriety, oftentimes it can be difficult to have connections with people who are wanting to live the same lifestyle as you. So the Boring Little Girls Club offers a place for folks to come and find like-minded folks who want to be sober and have a great time.
I felt that my queerness was celebrated. I love that we are a safer space for all folks within, the sober sphere.
There's no one right way to recover, and the Boring Little Girls Club is a significant part of a recovery community.
I'm really grateful to be part of the Boring Little Girls Club, where we are anything but boring.
Hey, my name is Chloe Ryan, and I'm an artist, engineering student at McGill University, and the founder of Acrylic Robotics. Acrylic is toppling the powers of the art world that keep exclusive buyers on top and regular art lovers and the artists themselves on the bottom. I sold my first painting nearly a decade ago. As I began to sell more, I quickly discovered a fundamental flaw in my business model. Each painting would take weeks to complete, and I could only ever sell each piece one time to one person. I had zero ability to scale, and I started to understand why people spoke of starving artists. Working by hand, artists can't produce a high enough volume of pieces to make a good living by selling at accessible prices. They have to hold down a second job or play the gallery game, inflating their prices, marketing to the elite, and restricting access to drive up value. And pursuing the latter option is disproportionately harder for artists who are female, racialized, don't come from wealth, don't have a well-heeled network, or otherwise don't fit the mold. This impacts the art buyer side too. It prices most consumers out of the art world. To decorate their spaces, people have to head to places like IKEA to buy cheap, mass-produced prints that don't directly support artists. This matters because art is a critical part of social dialogue, culture, and critique. It can change opinions, translate experiences, and can be the repository of a society's collective memory. But right now, only the well-off can possess it. At Acrylic, we think it's time this changed. We're solving the art accessibility problem through a technology-enabled, innovative business model. We leverage robotics and artificial intelligence to create painted replicas of an artist's original piece, like a printing press for books. Our tools record brushstrokes as artists paint, and then replay them with real paint on canvas to build the piece just like the artist. Artists can then sell these original replicas through limited edition collections with full control over their sales. We give artists a 50% commission and still have a highly profitable business model. We're unlocking an approach to art creation that no one else has conceived until now, and we're closing the equity gaps that are present in the art world.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for submitting those videos. As you all know in the chat, there was an error with the poll, so we're going to open up the correct poll shortly for voting. In the meantime, we're going to segue. Kristy is going to open up the panel. Hi,
Okay,
Beth.
Chris. Hi, Alexandra. How are you? Hi, everybody.
Good. How are you?
I'm great. Really good to be here today.
Beth is from United Way. She's amazing. She's going to be moderating our panel for today.
Thank you very much. Listen, I'm in the company of amazing, and I can't thank you enough for the invitation to join you today. And really, this is a great opportunity for all of us to listen and learn from, from Chloe and from Hanna and Kira and Peter and Lucas. Really on a bit of a how-to. What are some of the insights? You're all successful, and congratulations to Peter and Lucas on Hydrohouse. You're all winners. Yay, hands up. You're all winners. You're all doing things that are really important. They're really important to people in your local communities, and they're really important to Canadians. And this is really an opportunity for you to share with everyone else. What are some of the important, aha moments that you've had along your journey and along your way? And really, as I said in our pre-meeting chat, it's my job to really buckle my chin strap and hang on for the exciting conversation that's in front of us. So I want to start here really by asking each of you to respond to a question around this. It's let's say 2 years ago. Yeah, about 2 years ago, y'all were just kind of starting to think about what is the problem I'm trying to solve, right? So 2 years ago, putting yourself back where you were 2 years ago and thinking about where you are today, what is one of the big takeaway insights or aha moments that you've had? What would you tell yourself, your 2 years ago self, based on what you know on your journey today? So thinking about that one, Kira, I'm going to go to you first because I can see you're nodding and smiling. So what would you tell yourself from 2 years ago? What is the key insight that you need to know?
I would tell myself just to keep going, push on through. The Boring Little Girls Club is so important to my own sobriety. And what we've heard from folks is that we're saving lives. We're giving people the ability to have connection outside of society's alcohol and drug-centric community. So I would just say, keep going. This is important. You're going to save lives. Just take a deep breath. Rest when you need to rest, and don't let yourself get down.
Okay, I love it. Hanna, how would you respond to that? What would you tell your 2-year-old self to yourself from 2 years ago?
Kira, you've hit the bullseye there. I was going to, one of the things I was going to say was just relax. I'm in my startup, I'm the neurotic, anxious co-founder, and then my other co-founder is like the calm, collected person. So we do have a good balance, but I think that it's just, really good to relax and reflect and not just have a tunnel vision mentality every single day. It's good to just step back and assess what you've done. And then another thing, what is fail fast, fail hard, just don't grieve for a long time, just keep going. Just pick up the pieces and keep going.
So I love this idea that you're the neurotic one in your partnership. And I'm going to go to Peter and Lucas. I mean, there are two of you, you're both here. How would you describe and define your role and respond to this conversation? And what would you tell your relationship selves? You know, your 2 years ago relationship selves.
I'll start off. So, well, I feel like I have to start by saying, obviously, like a big thank you to the NU National Trico Foundation and the board. We're really honored to be recipients of the award for the inaugural year. Starting any social or tackling any social problem, they're usually really big problems. And I think what makes all of these panelists unique is that we're all students. And so approaching a big problem like this, when you don't necessarily, like you haven't even graduated yet, you don't know if you're equipped to really tackle such a big problem yet. But there are, like, I think you can just crush those negative thoughts right away, because there's so many resources that are available in universities nowadays. It doesn't have to be something you're doing on the side or on top of studies. There's ways to integrate it into your learning. And actually some like the best support systems for startups, I think, are in the university ecosystem. So take advantage of that, and you can definitely make it happen in university.
Great. So Lucas, how would you respond to that?
Yeah, I think what Peter's saying is pretty true for both of us. I mean, 2 years ago, this problem was not even quite on our radar yet. We were doing a lot of work in the renewable energy industry for other companies, not necessarily for ourselves. But I would definitely give myself the advice, if you think you can, make a difference doing something on your own, make that leap out of the private sector and start pursuing your dreams as an entrepreneur.
That's great. And Chloe, I want to thank you very much. And going to you, Chloe, I'm really interested in how what you would tell yourself from 2 years ago. I heard a lot of what you were saying, and I think what all of you are saying is how you're disrupting power imbalances. And you really spoke about that in your video. And just thinking about that, 2 years ago self, what would you tell yourself?
I would want to tell myself so many different things. Yeah, I mean, I definitely echo, I think, everything that everyone else has said. I think there's a ton of resources available for students when they're just starting companies. It's a great place to start. And yeah, I would also just tell myself not to be, and I think that the whole disrupting current power systems really plays into that, of not being afraid to do that. I think that a lot of students have big ideas, but, out against this big world that you're just starting to understand. And I would say, advise myself to not lose sight of the fact that that's a strength in building your business, ability to, you're just joining really adult society and observing all of these power structures and the way the existing societies and systems work. And I think that that is a strength in being able to really critique them and come up with new ideas to solve them, as opposed to a weakness or something that makes you less able to do so. So anyways, I would just reiterate that to myself, that it's possible, and that inexperience or being a student is actually an asset in a lot of these existing societies.
I couldn't agree with you more. So hold on to that thought. We're going to jump back on that one. I'm just going to pause here for a second, and tech crew, let's get that poll up. So this is the Popular Choice Award. Your mission, watchers, should you choose to accept it, is to please vote now for your favorite social enterprise to receive the Popular Choice Award. So as we wait for the voting to carry on here, we've just got a few more seconds left, I think, according to my polling clock. I want to, thinking about this context of power and thinking about the real disruption, the systems that each of you are disrupting. Really, it's around how problems are viewed and how solutions are built based on your perspective, right? Where are you viewing the problem from? So how would you describe yourself that? Where are you viewing the problem from? in the landscape of the problem, where are you? Are you close to the problem? Are you far away from the problem? Are you beside the problem? Pick whatever kind of a geographic metaphor that you might be able to determine. And we're going to get that poll question sorted out again here because there are only 3 choices, not 4. So they're going to give it another go. So let's just keep chatting. All right. So where are you in that power structure? How do you see yourself? And Chloe, I'm going to start with you because we were just, you took us there.
So kind of like in terms of in the problem space where we see ourselves?
Yeah, in the problem space and in the solution space. So where do you see yourselves? If there's a power imbalance that all of you are trying to address, whether it's a power imbalance in how energy services are designed and delivered, and who gets to make those choices, or whether or not it's the power imbalance in terms of who gets to make choices and decisions about who gets to be successful as an artist, or how people, who are living with different abilities, how they can choose to be successful. How close are you to those problems, and how far away are you from those problems? So where do you see yourself in that landscape? Kira, you've shared with us that this is how you are right in that space, right? You're in that sober sphere, and that is really a very big part of how you're handling your own recovery. So just trying to from an insights perspective, your colleagues and peers are listening in. They are likely in similar locations to the problem. If the problem's in the middle, where are you?
That's a really interesting question. I don't know if I've ever been asked that before. I would say so obviously, like the little 2-minute pitch video, trying to disrupt the system where artists have to be essentially selected by art galleries, and then it's way easier for certain types of artists to make it, hard to make a living as an artist. So the approach that we've taken is trying to both be compatible with the existing system so that we're not disadvantaging artists who do try and go that path, while also making it easy for artists who do or don't try and go the gallery route to also make a living. So that's kind of been a really important thing that we've incorporated into our business model, is how can we allow all artists, whether or not they're trying to go the gallery route or just trying to go sell commercially and make a living, be able to profit from their art. So and in terms of so trying to make something that is both compatible with the existing system, but is a way of, by doing so, disrupting it. I don't know, maybe once other people start talking, I'll have more thoughts. But
that's cool. Yeah. Dan overall did give me instructions, ask weird questions. So there you go. Weird question number 1. Who wants to chase this one? Kira? Yeah, see your hand up. Pick me.
I love talking, so in response to that question, as you said, Beth, I am in it, right? I am a sober human being. I live an abstinence-based life where I do not partake in any alcohol or drugs except for my medication. And that is the route for me. The Boring Little Girls Club was kind of created in this 24-hour period after I found the name. In my mind, I was like, oh, that's a cool name. And then in like 24 hours, we had our mission statement, our vision statement, the website was built, our social media was built. And in doing that, one of the most important things to me was that it was inclusive and accessible. So inclusive to folks that are normally on the margins, folks that do not feel safe to be in traditional recovery spheres. I have the huge privilege of being a white cisgendered woman. Underneath white men, I've got the most power. So it was really, really critical for when we were creating the structure of the club that we kept that in mind, and we kept those power imbalances in mind. A lot of our folks are trans. A lot of our folks are non-binary. A lot of our folks are racialized. How do we augment their voices and make them feel safe and seen and heard within their sobriety? I'm right within it. I got to give a shout out to my amazing team. Over the past couple of years, we have created different parts of the BLGC, which is what we call the Boring Little Girls Club, to really deal with that idea of these power imbalances. So an example would be our inclusion and diversity squad. I'm a white cis woman. I'm not queer. A lot of our folks are queer. It's actually inappropriate for me to speak on behalf of queer folks. So it's inappropriate for me to speak on behalf of trans folks. all I can do is offer the safest possible spaces. So we created the Inclusion and Diversity Squad, which is for our folks from the margin to have a voice in what we do and how to make things more accessible, more inclusive, safer, because that's what we're all about. We're about safety and non-judgment, and the ability to make sure that no one has to feel alone.
Well, that's great. Thanks. And Hanna, I think, the work that, the work that you and Peter and Lucas, that all of you are doing actually falls within that space. So thinking about, what Kira is saying, how do you respond to this question?
I think had a while to think about this. So Sanjay, the co-founder, my co-founder, Excessium's co-founder, principal founder, he created the idea of helping people who use hand controls in vehicles who are normally disabled to give them the system of facial gesture recognition to help control their car. He is quadriplegic, so from his perspective, he created this for him and people that he knew, that were in the same kind of sphere. I'm not in the problem. I don't use hand controls, for instance. However, as a unit where our primary goal is to help people with spinal cord injuries, people with, stroke victims, MS, to help them, drive with ease, drive without concern. However, it's very, very, very hard to find money for startups that are trying to help disabled people. Talk to any venture capitalist and we tell him our market size, and it's like, what, a 30-minute phone call is like now a 5-minute phone call, which is fine. It just kind of makes us scrappy. So one of the things that we've been doing to kind of step outside our main problem and to disrupt this kind of inability to grow as fast as we want to is to connect with, we've connected with the AVEN hubs in Ontario, the Autonomous Vehicle Innovation Network hubs. So they're really interested in using our facial gesture recognition to help with user experience for when it comes time for operators to actually operate autonomous vehicles. And not just for vulnerable populations, but some of them do include the blind community, people of advanced age who might need just some type of control in the autonomous vehicle, or even just people in general. So we've kind of stepped outside of our main problem, found this other problem to feed our main problem. So thereby disrupting this kind of inability to secure enough money from the get-go. So
yeah, no, I love that. I mean, all problems are interconnected and solutions are interdependent, right? None of us live our lives in these kind of little tidy spaces that, even market research will tell you that's the case.
Pivot,
so,
pivot, right?
pivot. That's what we're doing, right on purpose. So, Lucas, Peter, how are you thinking about your problem and your location to it?
I think building off of what Kira and Hanna said, those are like perfect places for us to start this conversation about where we are in the problem space. Because, like Kira said, she was like at the center of her problem space, right? And that's how she had the ability to focus on how to solve that problem. And Hanna was also talking about how like she extrapolated from the original problem space to like addressing a different problem space with the same technology. And that's something Luke and I certainly realized pretty early on is the idea for Hydrohouse actually stemmed from a real problem on Luke's farm. But we pretty quickly realized that there's other customers in Canada, like these off-grid remote communities in which there are 200,000 Canadians that are experiencing this problem, but it's a much more like acute experience because the problem is really, it's almost like a catastrophe level problem. Like if they don't address this problem soon, then they're going to have to really change their way of life. So by addressing the problem on Luke's farm early on, we're going to be able to extrapolate our solution to other people in the problem space, which is something that we're really excited to do. So I guess it's just like expanding on your problem experience.
Yeah, it certainly like stemmed from that original idea that we had because of poor grid electricity that I was getting at at my farm, but it's not, we still have other options there. We are connected to the grid, and we have the ability to get grid power from renewable sources as there's wind turbines around and solar farms around. But we weren't seeing the same amount of progress happening in remote communities, and there really wasn't anybody. And we've spoken to people, that are a lot closer to remote communities, and they're saying like nobody's attempting to find a solution on the scale that we are. Like they're coming up with a lot of band-aid solutions, but nothing that's getting like right to the center of the problem and eliminating the problem. They're just kind of like putting cover-up solutions on. So we thought, if we can come up with something that's going to work for my farm, then like let's bring it to these people that really need it in remote communities too.
No, I've taken many trips across our country and coast to coast to coast, flying and or driving. And the one thing that, my experience tells me is that most Canadians live remote from each other. Even people who are living in cities are living in cities that are remote from each other. Yeah. So I think it's interesting. All of you have also said that because of where and how you see yourselves in the problem space, either right in it or adjacent to it, that you kind of said, well, you know what, you started from a really personal place, right? Your own personal experience. But I'm kind of wanting to shift a little bit here in terms of thinking, 2 years ago, your 2-year-old self, 2 years ago self, and what would have been helpful? What would have been helpful? So you've all talked about, the grit and the determination that you've all needed, and just keep going and have the fortitude and the strength, and take advantage of the resources that are available to you as student entrepreneurs. But what really would have been helpful? Like when you woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, having a panic attack, because if it didn't happen to you, that is awesome, because I wake up regularly going, oh my goodness, So when you wake up and you kind of go, oh my goodness, what would have been helpful to you in that moment, and or what do you need right now when you're having those moments? Just jump in.
I'm going to jump in because the first answer to that would be money. Always money. I bankrolled the BLGC for like the first, because what we do is we throw events, right? We throw events, we have folks come out, we do different fundraisers, we support organizations within our community, but that adds up a lot. And because of where we're situated within like the addictions landscape, we're not a recovery home. We're not a recovery group. We're not an in-person treatment center. We're not an outpatient treatment center. We don't really have a definition because we don't ascribe to a certain way of doing things. So we're in this like really wild gray area where there is very little funding available. Like we do everything with around $5,000 a year, which is wild. And that's for, our over 90 registered members and our folks across the country that support us. So money is number one for me, would be having more accessible grants and options available. Unlike the other folks, when I first started the BLGC, I was actually coming back into school. So I had a mental break and walked away from, I was at University of British Columbia, and I walked away. I was also doing some illicit substances at the time, which did not help. I walked away and I got zeros. I didn't follow up. I wasn't in the state to follow up. And so I actually had to go through this whole process of getting back into school, and no one wanted me. Like U of C wouldn't have me, and fair enough, because my GPA was not great. So, I was able to get back into things with Athabasca because it's a virtual platform, and because everything is distance learning. I actually wasn't able to access a lot of the student resources that other folks have talked about. So it was that grit and determination. What would have made it easier? More access to reliable funding.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, funding's got to be up there. Who else wants to chase this one? What would have been helpful? And I've got some questions in the chat I'll go to once we go through this cycle.
Yeah, I think a lot of student entrepreneurs I mean, I think a lot of entrepreneurs in general are pretty like high achieving people potentially. And so as a result, like, you know, you're trying to maintain school grades and you're trying to balance all types of things. And you want to be a perfectionist on every kind of aspect of your life, but that's really not realistic. So maybe just like one thing I would say that's causing these like wake up at midnight kind of panic attacks that you're talking about could just be that you're not moderating yourself. So is it really realistic to like, I mean, it's unbelievable that Kira was able to create a website overnight and launch her community in such a short time, but like for many of us, it's like a real slugfest kind of going through the paces. So just like be patient with yourself and moderate your expectations. It will take a couple of years or longer to grow. So
yeah, something I would add as well is like just knowing that there are people out there that are willing to help you. Like if you're having a panic attack or you don't know where you're going to go next, like the University of Waterloo has been an amazing space with tons of people that are willing to help us and willing to give us advice. And you know, they're not asking for anything in return. They're faculty members or professors or just other people in the entrepreneur environment here. Like they're people are willing to help you. You just need to ask or go looking for them, and you'll find them.
Yeah, you often don't have enough time to satisfy all the people that want to help you. Yeah.
Hanna, Chloe, you want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, I think one thing that I needed to learn was how to become a good salesperson. 2 years ago, I hated sales, didn't really like interacting with, I love interacting with people, but just like when it comes to like selling something or trying to convince them to look into something, it wasn't my strong suit. So practicing those skills earlier on would have made my life a little bit easier today. And then also like if I just like had a wish, maybe just having the contacts I have now 2 years ago, that would have been good. Because it was a slog. It was definitely a slog. And I think not a lot of change can happen without people in your network, really. That's the only way that I've experienced. So
Yeah, I would say the biggest thing would have been, you know, that community. We started Acrylic during COVID. We did everything virtual. And I think that having people, I mean, mentors is great, you know, people who have decades of experience to lend to you, but I think also just informal collisions with people who are that one step ahead of you, who can understand the issues that you're facing in minute detail, and as opposed to, you know, they went through them, you know, a decade ago. And I think that was really challenging at the beginning for us, of not having that community of other people working on ideas, working on early stage ventures, especially because of COVID. You know, you really had to go out and find people. And I've noticed that now, you know, now that things are back in person, more or less, there's so many more informal collisions. And I found that I've been able to help out a lot of younger student entrepreneurs at McGill and in the other communities I'm a part of. So I think that the one thing that I would have loved would be just, yeah, getting to know more people, you know, working on projects, so that when you do have those late night, oh my God, you know, everything's going wrong, you've got someone to call who has gone through something similar before and can tell you it's going to be okay. Just do this, this, and this. So, yeah.
So we've heard a lot about some of the questions in the chat are saying, you know, what advice do you have, and how do you manage your time? I think a lot of you are speaking to that right now, and things that you wish you would have known, you know, a couple of years ago. The importance of relationships, building networks, collision spaces, you know, reaching out. People are there to help you. Just talking with people about what it is that you're doing generally, you know, kind of helps you build a network. So a lot of that is around advice, right? So I have a question in here in the chat that I really want to think about. You know, here's a question. If you don't have the ability to bootstrap your social enterprise, you all need money, right? How do you find funding? Is there a role for government here? So, you know, how are some of those funding restrictions or funding programs that exist or don't exist? What kind of a funding program do you want to see? You are the entrepreneur. What kind of a funding program do you need? And there are no wrong answers. What kind of a funding program do you need?
Maybe like venture capitalism for smaller market segments, or like not just like venture capitalism, but just like angel investors in general who are very socially forward. There are organizations though that are made up of investors, like in Toronto, for instance, who do that. But just seeing more that are catered for the accessibility market, I would love that.
Yeah. Yeah, I 100% agree with Hannah. Investors are phenomenal. And it would be super rad for like someone just to be like, here you go. I believe in you. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, we've had a lot of conversations around, what does unrestricted investment mean, look like?
Yeah.
And that's basically what you did, right, Carrie? It was you bootstrapped yourself. So Peter and Luke, like, what are you thinking about in terms of that space? What do you need? You're a funder. Kira said, just give me some money.
I've also got another point, but I will go after.
Okay.
One thing that has been challenging about finding is like finding appropriate funding that's actually like pretty well suited for your startup. So like this competition, for instance, is like dedicated to entrepreneurs that are addressing a social or problem. And there are, just in our case, because we're in like the renewable energies sector, there's quite a bit of government focus on developing clean technologies. And there are like countless funds at all government levels down to municipal level that are available for projects in this space. And ironically, one of the hardest parts about looking for funding in this space is navigating which of those grants are like would actually apply to your company. So like having a tool that you could almost like, or like an organization that you could like upload your information to, and then they could say, hey, this is like your kill list. Like you just apply to these grants and don't worry about the other ones are just noise. So having something like that would be really useful, at least in our case where it's like overwhelming how many grants there are out there and you only have so much time to apply to them.
If I may, there is an app for that and it's very useful, and I'll post it in the chat for everyone.
Is that Grant Watch?
Let me circle back.
Very similar as well.
Okay, let's both post it
in the chat.
Yeah, that'd be awesome if you guys can share. Thanks.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, Chloe. Can I hop in and just say one thing? No, I was gonna go like off of what Peter said. One of our biggest struggles in finding funding is actually finding the sector we fit into. Because we don't focus on the addiction side of it. We're actually focusing on creating community connection. A lot of grants aren't accessible to us. So I think that in terms of, it would be really great to see if provincially and federally governments could open up the doors to more idea-based and community-based funding versus a singular project. Because for us, all of our projects are so small scale, but when you add all of them up, the social impact is quite large. And we don't want to really be, again, applying to grants that aren't for us. Like we don't want to be, in that sphere and have to adhere to all of these different rules and regulations and policies that will actually stop us from being able to do what we need to do.
I come at this from a slightly different lens than Boring Little Girls Club, maybe some more similar to Hydrohouse's situation, but we're deep tech. We are going to need a lot of funding to get us off the ground and do applied research and all of that stuff. And I would say the biggest problem, obviously there was a ton of issues at the beginning with finding funding and a lot of creative accounting and sort of pulling from this and that and making things work at the beginning while we were still sort of getting our feet under us. And that's a journey that I think all entrepreneurs kind of have to go through. But I would say the bigger issue now is, we're looking at the venture capital space, and most venture capital firms don't want to invest in students. There's one VC firm that's dedicated to investing in student entrepreneurs. It's led by students. It's called Front Row Ventures. That's the only one, and there are thousands of others. And so I think the issue that I've really run into is the question of, you know, do I go after my venture and make the difference that I want to see in the world if that means that I have to drop out of school? And I think that that's the pressure that I've heard from a lot of entrepreneurs in my communities go through is, you know, what are the pros and cons, and the frustration at how is this the only option? Like it feels like there should be some in between. And that goes not just for VC, but also for loans and stuff like that. Yesterday, I was on the phone being rejected from a loan that we applied for because I am not paying myself a salary and I'm also a student, and they don't like that. So yeah, I think that more funding opportunities for student entrepreneurs. So many cool ideas come out of universities, and there needs to be more support for that. That's my 2 cents.
So listen, that's really interesting. So we've got some comments in the chat. You know, are there business accelerators? There's events. There's, you know, a range of venture capital potentially available to you. There's different tools to help people understand how they can navigate and negotiate the space. But what I'm also hearing from you is I don't know if the VC market's ready for y'all. Are they ready for y'all? You know? And what I mean by that is you're really out ahead of the curve, right? So when you think about that adoption curve, and you're visionary, all of you are visionary. And you're really pushing the tension, not only on the problem you're trying to solve, but you're actually also pushing on the tension of how resources are actually provided to actually change the world, right? So I feel like one of the things that I'm hearing is that you're all kind of operating in the future space, and you're relying on the legacy space to actually follow you. Or you're having to go back into the legacy space to actually extract resources to follow you into the future where you're already living, right? Is that kind of like a general sort of theme? So is that a reality for you? I just need like a head nod or a thumbs up. Does that generally resonate? Yeah. Okay. So when we think about when you think about that as really being the core problem that many of you are actually solving, without necessarily identifying that as being the problem that you're solving, right? Because each of you are solving different problems in your ventures. But I'm really hearing that the other problem that you're all solving is trying to figure out how to transform the legacy realities of our world, our social, financial, government constructs, to adapt them into the future. So I'm thinking about all the work that you're doing. It's really adaptive, right? It's all adaptive. You're adapting technology to solve problems. So what might you say to the legacy systems? What do you need to do to adapt? So Peter, you're in charge of a legacy system. You need to make some adaptive change. What are you going to do first?
I don't know that we're necessarily experiencing like the same pains with like fitting our company into the legacy mold, because at least with renewables, there's pretty much consensus right now that we need that, like we've identified this legacy mold, which was fossil fuels and everything. And then there's kind of like a cultural shift occurring right now towards a new energy grid system, which is like solar, renewables and stuff. And the tech that we're going to be applying, like specifically hydrogen technology for storage of energy, it is a new technology, but it's also recognized, and there's attempts right now to like fit that into the legacy mold and everything. I more so see I can more so relate to like Kira's issue. Like I understand her pains and not feeling like they fit into a category, at least Hydrohouse. I think we kind of know what category we fit into right now. So it's not as real of an issue right now for us.
So Chloe, I'm thinking about your deep tech, right? So Peter and Luke, I'm kind of interested and curious, what do you hear from what Chloe's doing? Is her deep tech adaptable or applicable to what you're doing, or vice versa?
I think Chloe, like I certainly relate to the things that Chloe's saying with being a tech company. There are like with a hard tech or soft, well, more so a hard tech company, which I think there obviously is a component to what the company, the Acrylic Robotics, is. You guys are physically like constructing paintings, so it must be. some physical system as well as your machine learning system. But one of the challenges for us being a hard tech company is that knowing, and this is something I wanted to ask Chloe, is I don't know if you guys have built like a kind of like a physical prototype or something, but how did you know when you had kind of like proven or like modeled the system enough to go ahead with actually creating like a physical model? Because with a hard tech company, that's like one of the major barriers, is like knowing when to invest in building a demonstration model.
Beth, would you like me to answer that or come back, circle back to it? Go. Yeah, that is the $1 million question, I think. Yeah, we actually have written, or we keep joking about getting a sign under our logo that says we're almost there. Referring to that question of you know, when do you put down resources to build versus coming up with concepts. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's the classic, all of the startup models about, you know, staying lean and validating. We've tried to do that as much as possible. And we've also just tried to be really scrappy with the prototypes that we do build, which is easier for us than maybe for you guys, depending on the scale of what you're working on. But yeah, starting out really scrappy with, you know, here are the closest things we can find. This is I guess the technical analogy. And proving out small systems as opposed to building the full thing. So really breaking down we're building a lot of little pieces that tie together. So looking at how can we validate this one part of our technology without having to build the full system. And I think that's helped us, you know, rely on less funding. And yeah, just really, I think, which I think actually being a student and having the naivete a little bit of being a young student and thinking, well, why don't we just go ahead and build it? Like, we spent all summer with a whole bunch of student interns, you know, sawing things on balconies and, you know, raw electronics. And, you know, now looking back, we're like what were we doing? But yeah, I don't know. It's a really tricky question. And I could talk about that for a long time. But it's one of the big challenges when it comes to deep tech, any kind of real tech, and funding and all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
And I see you're nodding. Does that resonate with you too?
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, the communication protocol we use with vehicles right now will become a legacy system in maybe 15 years, maybe 20, it depends. So basically, that's kind of what our product is centered around, this specific protocol. But now, kind of on the sidelines, we've started to investigate how to integrate our product with this new protocol that, again, won't be seen for like a decade at least. So we're just always thinking about that. That's how I think we can ensure the adaptive nature of like how we should be running as a company. Yeah, just always kind of like thinking of like 2 steps ahead while focusing on the present, because you don't really get any benefit if you are not prepared for the future, right?
How do you see the future?
Basically, everything connected via the internet, including cars, like a connected future, a highly, highly connected data run future. All hail the singularity. I'm just joking, but yeah, just a highly connected future, something that will require a lot of efficiency. Yeah.
And are your VC partners ready for that?
I mean, if they're not, like, they're losing out. But yeah, a lot of companies have started thinking about that for sure. I mean, it's big in the autonomous vehicle space because there's no way for autonomous vehicles to actually coordinate with one another without being connected. Otherwise, it would just be chaos, right? Trying to put them into our cities and streets right now. Yeah, it's good to think about.
Chloe.
I have one last thing before I move on to the last question about your question about working in legacy systems and how that relates to funding. That I think really resonated with Acrylic. You know, we're going out and just starting to look for funding sources, and the people who we're going to in the early stages are angel investors who have more than enough money to, they join Zoom calls with beautiful, $50,000 art pieces on their wall, who really do not understand the problem space. And, wealthy artists, galleries, like the legacy systems are the people with the funding to be able to allow early companies like us innovating in the space to grow and succeed, but they have a vested interest in not allowing us to do so because, and that comes kind of back to my maybe not very eloquent first response, but about, galleries and trying to mold ourselves to be somewhat compatible when really we're actually trying to disrupt, because if we don't sort of try and fit that mold, it really hinders our ability to move forward, because then we encounter a ton of opposition with respect to the current legacy system.
Yeah, and Kira, I feel like that's a lot of what you're living in too, right? I mean, I think that you would have a response to that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I find it really interesting because I don't actually deal with a lot of tech companies. I'm more on the human side of it. So I'm like, oh, deep tech. That's not my jam. I don't really understand a lot of it. Not gonna lie, I'm not a science gal. But, I think in terms of the legacy systems, what we're kind of seeing is we are looking at this problem where a lot of what we work with is morality. So the government of Alberta right now is a very abstinence-based government. And there's this like black and white. If you use drugs, you're a bad person. If you're a drug addict, you're a bad person. And if you're sober, you're a good person, right? There's this moral question of, are you a good or bad person based on what your mental health or your substance use preferences are? And that's not what we're looking at, right? We want to kind of remove ourselves from that entire question just because it's the wrong question to ask, right? Like, who cares if you use drugs or not? What's important is that you're healthy and you're safe, right? Sobriety, abstinence-based living isn't going to be for everyone, and that's okay, right? I'm an expert in my own experience, as is everyone else. And what works for me isn't going to work for someone else unless, it does. So what we're looking at is at changing the question and creating visibility and awareness around mental health, around substance use, around these really critical issues that we need to have conversation about, because people are dying right now. Like and I don't understand what the issue is in terms of the government. I'm like, people are dying, you have the power to save them, but that's another thing. So for us, what we want to do is we want to shift the question. We want to be able to talk to folks and say, okay, so this is one of the supports you can have after you get sober, or in a harm reduction mode. If you want to spend time not drinking and using, you can come and hang out with us. Right? So we want to give that support after the fact. So we're not dealing with relapses. We're not dealing with folks going back out into a world where maybe their drugs are different. Maybe the potency and toxicity is different, right? So we are really looking at shifting that question and kind of forcing folks to come along. I mean, if we look at the social change that we have right now, in terms of like the humanities sphere, if we look at the social change in terms of queer rights, trans and non-binary rights, if we look at, the racial calling and what's going on right now in the anti-racist sphere and the work that's being done, we are ready for this. We just need to force the question, and we need to force it onto the government and the folks with money to say, hey, this is actually necessary. Because I can tell you right now, I would not be here today if I hadn't gotten sober.
Yeah, I think, and thanks for sharing that perspective, Kira. I think that, a friend of mine, Rachel Superside, gave me a graphic novel a number of years ago, and it featured this, odd little graphic character sitting on a bench in a park. Trust me, this is relevant. Little dude is sitting on the park bench, and just sitting there. And a big dude comes along, cartoon dude, whatever, comes along and says, "What are you doing?" And the little guy's got a box on his lap, and he says, "Well, I'm collecting questions." And the other character said, "Well, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard of. Why are you collecting questions? Who cares?" And the little dude said, "Well, no, I'm really interested in collecting questions. Because if we're not asking or collecting the best series of questions, how will we know that we're in fact solving the problems that need to be solved, right? So I feel that all of you have been, asking yourselves some really deep questions. And I'm going to make a direct connect back here to your academic realities for a second. There's some questions in the chat, and my dear fellow panelists here, I would ask you to monitor some of the questions. Some of them are actually specific to you, which I can't answer. But thinking about this idea of questions, how's your education contributing to your understanding your question set?
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. So I am in my 4th year of my Bachelor of Commerce at Athabasca. First going to say Athabasca is absolutely amazing and I love it. The flexibility has given me the ability to do what I do on a daily basis because I still have to work to pay my bills. So I work, BLGC, school. I actually started out as a political science major with a minor in women and gender studies. I've always been quite a wild, radical feminist and really interested in different power dynamics and upholding the voices of folks that are normally not heard from. So in changing that, I had a strange university career, an academic career. I was a very high achiever in high school. I got into school. I went to 3 different schools in 3 different years, dropped out of UBC, worked for a couple of years, got sober, decided it was ready to get back into school. And Athabasca's really worked for me. The other thing that I was thinking about when I was going to school is how can I make the biggest difference? How can I disrupt the system that I actually don't morally believe in? How can I go in and have an understanding of what's going on without actually doing the work to understand it? Right. So I chose to go into commerce. I'm getting my general commerce degree, and it's been a wild ride. Like, I'm a full-time student and I'm working, and it's a balance, and it's a really dedicated dance, I would say, because I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah, no, it's true. So, and I know that question's come up a lot in the chat here, like, oh my goodness, you're balancing so many things. So so you've made a really direct connection, Kira. You deliberately made a choice to educate yourself in a particular sphere because you can see how it's going to connect to your venture. And I'm assuming the rest of you are making the same kind of connections, right? I mean, you're studying things that you're also applying into your venture, yeah?
Yeah, we have the unique opportunity because we're students that university doesn't have to create problems, or it can also answer a lot of these questions for us. Like going back to like the very first question on the obstacles, I think one of the biggest obstacles that Luke and I felt was just like this overwhelming like feeling of this is such a complex problem. It's got a lot of technical components, and then there's like just the entire business aspect of it and how to reach customers as well. And then at least in university, we can tailor our university experience to like help address those some of those technical questions. So we're like specifically taking courses that are allowing us to like personally develop. And then right now, I mean, the business, it's really just us. So it's university is allowing us to develop the business through ourselves, which is great.
It's good. Hanna, Chloe, anything else you want to say around education?
Yeah, I'm finishing my last year of my PhD, and it's been tough because I haven't really been able to integrate my startup with my PhD. My supervisor is supportive, but not in the way that you want to be, words are cheap kind of thing. So it's been tough, but I've been able to just do it. And it's I think one of the things I've learned from my PhD is how to design a project like really well. So thinking of everything that can go wrong and preventing and having contingency plans. So for if things do go wrong, just designing experiments or user studies in a way that you're not wasting time and only introducing the most important variables that you want to look at. So that's been helpful. But in terms of like coordinating the two subjects, it's not there, but it will be in my postdoc, which is good. I'll finally integrate my startup with my postdoc. So.
I'm studying, I'm in my 4th year out of 5 of mechanical engineering, which is definitely relevant to what I'm building. I would say that most of the things that I've learned that I've been able to tie back to my venture haven't really been through school though. We've done several accelerators, which I think has been definitely, I mean, good basis. Like I think it's important, and that's part of the reason why I have decided to stay in school for now, at least. Yeah, definitely juggling the two is I mean, that's kind of a whole other conversation, lots to say about that. But I don't know. I also think that a lot of startup ideas come from this is just my personal opinion, but I find it's very true, come from the interesting intersections of things. And I think the more different types of courses you take can only help increase the breadth of the things that you know about and can intersect in new and exciting ways. So yeah, especially in the idea generation process, I think school can be a huge asset.
So I'm just going to chase a question that came up earlier in the chat that really is about that. So you all have like an incredible diversity of enterprises. So how can others, the question is, how can others pinpoint where an idea they might have could work? How do you identify that, you know, you have an idea that can work and that's possible?
I think that's definitely like a customer validation type question. Like if you have an idea, you need to get out there and test it. If you have something you think that there's somebody interested in, we'll go find that person and ask them and say, hey, like, are you willing to pay for this? Are you willing to use my service, whatever it is that you, whatever idea it is that you have?
Customer testing, that's right. Test and validate, right? If you don't have a market for your product, how do you know that it's a problem that needs solving? And how do you know that anybody would like your solutions, right? Yeah. So there's a last question here. Someone saying this group is describing the path of every entrepreneur in history. Huzzah. So entrepreneurship by its very definition is disruptive, right? So the question I think is being an entrepreneur today easier, do you think? Because of the internet is the question, or the reach of the internet, and because of some of those opportunities?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think LinkedIn has become one of my best friends for acquiring a larger network. So from that perspective, yes, but there are probably other perspectives too.
Yeah, I mean, on that note, the Boring Little Girls Club started out like this wee little thing. And our main platform was Instagram. I love me some Instagram. And through technology and through the internet and through traditional media spheres, we were able to gain notoriety. So within 2 months of us launching the organization, we were on national television, right? And that gave us a platform for folks to come and find us to post about things. Like, I don't feel like that connection could have been possible, at least not within the time frame previous to the advent of the internet and social media platforming, you know, because you're just not able to connect in the same way. We now have a person whose entire role is social media and to connect with our folks, because the internet is so accessible to folks. Almost everyone I know has a cellular device that can connect to Wi-Fi, even if you don't have data, which is a possibility depending on your financial capacity. You are able to connect to Wi-Fi, and there are spheres that you can get free Wi-Fi in, which means that you are able to connect to the organizations that you need. I think that it would have been possible, absolutely, to have community connection. I mean, we can look at 12-step organizations to see that that growth is possible, but I don't think it would have been the same time frame. So I think it might have been easier to grow that way. I am going to put it out there that we also, because of the notoriety, we have had quite a bit of negativity thrown our way, because there are a lot of folks that don't like what we're doing. There are a lot of folks who take a lot of issue with the fact that we are inclusive spaces and that we are for women, trans, and non-binary folks. So there has also been that flip side of people are able to get to you. a lot easier and say some really cruel and hurtful things that can hurt your heart a little bit. And that's just, you know, it's one of the things that you have to handle and not react to it, because it's not actually about you, that's on the other person. But I would like to point that out, that even though it's easier to grow, there are some negative aspects to the use of the internet.
Yeah, there's definitely a shadow side, that's for sure. Anyone else want to jump in? Peter?
I certainly think it's a double-edged sword. I mean, we get to apply to, we can easily access pitch competitions like across Canada or the globe. But when we apply to ones even in our own backyard, we're competing against people from all over the place. So it makes it like a little bit of a different dynamic for sure. It's hard to say whether it's better or worse. I don't know.
I mean, look at this panel, right? I'm in Alberta, y'all are in Ontario, and then there's someone from Chloe, you're in Montreal, right? Like, this is wild that this is available and that we're able to have these conversations, because I personally am learning a lot. So
I would add that, I mean, I definitely think that the internet as a concept has made a lot of things easier. One of those things I think is getting started. You know, if you have I mean, depending what industry you're in, but the time to first prototype for a lot of classic, you know, software as a service, or, you know, an app, or I don't know, some venture, you can whip up an app or a website or, you know, something like that in, you know, a week, overnight for Kira. And I think that that has really changed a lot of things. Like, you can much more quickly iterate through ideas. And I also think that whenever things change, there's typically a lot of room for innovation, and the internet, generally speaking, and all the things that it's enabled have created so many different avenues in the world of really fast-paced growth that allow for lots of different people to work in those little sections that arise. And I think really interesting things have happened. So yeah.
Yeah, and I'll add for us as well, like our customers, remote communities, you know, by definition, they're hard to get to physically. So without the internet, like, it's kind of our only option to be able to actually talk with these people without physically. I mean, a lot of them, you know, it's days of work just to try and visit one community, and there's only, you know, a couple hundred people there, and then you're, you know, trying to find the next one after that. And it's like pretty much like the internet's our only tool to reach our customers. So yeah, for us, it's definitely very important.
A laptop is a lot cheaper than a helicopter. So
yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that, because I was just thinking about all those fly-in communities all over our country, and that really puts up a whole other challenge and barrier when it comes to cost, right? So I have a question here in the chat. We just have a few minutes left. I'm really enjoying the conversation, and I've learned a lot today. And I hope that you stay connected to each other, because I think there's a lot of you know, cross adaptation and learnings that I'm hearing from each of you. And I just have a hunch that there might be things that you can share with each other to actually accelerate the work that each of you are doing. So what's the best piece of advice you've received so far? And I'm going to start with you, Lucas.
Yeah, that's tough, because we have quite a few advisors that we're always talking to. But the best piece of advice I've had is, you know, if you truly believe in what you're doing, then you can make it work. Like, if you are, you know, hesitant about your enterprise, hesitant about being an entrepreneur, then maybe it's not for you. But if you really believe in yourself and you believe in your business or your idea, if you're still just in the ideation phase, then carry on and go for it.
Chloe.
I'm like mentally sorting through all the different pieces of advice I've ever gotten. Can you come back to me? I'm like,
yeah, no, for sure. Who wants to jump? Kira?
Yeah, I mean, I'm in the same boat as Chloe. I'm like, oh my gosh, oh Lord. So I think I was 3 pieces of advice. 1, monetize your model. That is like number 1, because we're community based. We don't actually have a product to sell. We're selling a service, AKA community. And we want to be accessible. Figure out how much people are willing to pay for that model and how to monetize it so that we can become sustainable. which we did in April. We launched our membership process, which puts money back into the bank. We're working on that still. 2, sorry, I'm making myself chuckle. Be gentle with yourself. You know, I'm a perfectionist. I'm definitely a type A person. You know, be gentle, be kind to yourself. You're not going to be perfect all the time. It's okay if you make a mistake. And 3, work harder than anyone else at the table. Always. You know, you've got to be the hardest working one if you want to get this off the ground. Delegate out if possible, but you are the first one there and you're the last to leave at night.
Hustle is real. Okay, we got 5 minutes left, y'all. So I'm going to go Peter, Hanna, and then come back to you, Chloe.
Yeah, work hard, but work smart. I love this one analogy. It's be a sniper with your time, not a machine gunner. So just really like pick your targets and just hit them. Don't just set off blasts of effort. Yeah.
A quote that I love, not to be cliche, but it's by Elon Musk. So being an entrepreneur is like eating glass and staring into the abyss of death. So the best piece of advice I have gotten is love eating glass. Just like learn how to be a masochist a little bit. If you can't do it, I don't know if this is the right field for you, because it's never going to be easy.
Wow, I don't, not that that's an incorrect statement, but oh boy, eating glass, the mental image. I really agree with Peter. I think one of the hallmark traits of a really good entrepreneur is someone who can very clearly identify what the most important things to spend time on are. Like, you are managing, especially, well, even if you have a team or whether or not you have a team, you're looking at managing so many different things. And there are so many fires every single day, and the ability to triage, like, you know, channeling your inner ER doctor and figuring out what are the things that are most important. What's, you know, maybe this is a very engineering mindset that I've always taken, is like, you know, output per unit time, but thinking about focusing on what the three most important things are, I think is something that's really helped us. Yeah. And also just, I don't know, it's a roller coaster. And I think just advice that people always give me that I think is important is just to have that in mind and, you know, not let the lows get you down. You only ever see the highs. Like this panel, you're all, wow, like, look, we're doing so great, but there's been a lot of lows to get here. And I think just expecting that so that you don't feel like it's just you that is happening to when they do come.
Yeah, no, thanks for that, Chloe. You know, there are a lot of other folks that you're inspiring on this call, and I know you've been inspired by a lot of other people in your own lives and in your own careers, academic and entrepreneurial careers. And I want to thank you for, for sharing your enthusiasm, the highs and the lows, your insights with everyone. So I really want to thank you all for that. And I'm going to end with a quote here by Marcus Aurelius, perhaps not eating glass. So let me leave on a different kind of note, although I understand the eating glass thing 100%. Willing acceptance now at this very moment of all external events, that's all you need. And I think it's kind of interesting, this notion of acceptance and your role in that accepting, and what you choose to accept and what you will not choose to accept is, I think, a big takeaway for me today. So I want to thank you for your inspiration. Folks are saying the same thing in the chat, and those of you who contributed in the Q&A. Sorry I didn't get to them all, but many of your questions I feel were answered in the general conversation. So I want to thank you, each of you, Kira, Hanna, Chloe, Peter, Lucas. Listen, good luck, change the world, go do it.
Thanks all so much. Great meeting you guys.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Over to you, my colleagues at Trico.
Well, thank you guys for such an insightful panel. Thank you, Beth, for being a wonderful moderator. And I really appreciated seeing the highs and lows of your guys' experience as student entrepreneurs. And I, for one, can definitely relate. So I was listening the whole way through. And now let's turn it over to what you've all been waiting for. Which organization won the Popular Choice Award? Patrick, will you do the honors?
Definitely. Thanks, Kristy. So I just want to say again, like, it's so wonderful to see these panelists and the finalists for the new National Student Award, because you guys bring so much experience to the table, and the advice that you guys are giving out and for others to hear about and get inspired by that as well is something that what we're trying to do as a board as well. You know, we're couldn't be happier. So without further ado, popular choice award goes to Acrylic Robotics. Chloe, congratulations for the $10,000 prize from the popular choice. Thanks, Kristy. Back to you.
Thank you, Patrick, and congrats, Chloe. So thank you for joining us, everyone. And, you know, as a student social entrepreneur, I'm so delighted to see the work being done by my peers across the country. Together, we are truly looking forward to a better tomorrow. So we're not done hearing from and supporting our students. As you may have seen on the website, there's a case competition on Saturday where audience members will be able to watch the final 7 teams compete for a combined prize of $10,000. And what's a case competition, you may ask? It's where students will read a case study about a real organization, in this case, Smart Ice, and propose solution to their business concerns. It's a wonderful experiential learning opportunity for students to apply their classroom knowledge. This will be followed by a student social entrepreneur panel. So make sure to attend this session to get a glimpse of our future leaders. After a short break, we'll be back for What's Next YYC, where you, the audience, will be investors once again. Thank you, everyone.